Or if you can't get out of it, there's no need to get out of it. There's no need for philosophy or metaphysics, because that's the way out of the personal realm. Now, suppose there are people, however, who are on a quest for meaning, personal meaning that goes beyond intrapsychic events. Well, psychology can study them in terms of the way in which they report their inner experiences. How do they do it? They explore how the subject reports their inner experience. That allows them to remain in the field of psychology. They make no claim about the reality of those statements. They make no claim as to the truth of them. All they want to say is that people say this and they go through these kinds of experiences, but they make no judgment about the truth or the reality of any of the statements made. Now, when people go on a philosophical quest, a meaningful quest called the transpersonal quest, which is then suprapersonal, so you can have three kinds of problems. You can have a intra-personal problem, that's within yourself. You can have intro, you can have the next, which is inter-personal problem, that's between people, that's sociology. And you can have kinds of problems which are suprapersonal. That has nothing to do with the intrapsychic dimensions. It has no relationship with the sociologies and the problem of people relating to one another. This has been called the realm of philosophy. Used to be. Now, in the West, philosophy has degenerated into its usual form in the colleges, and no one even wants to talk about the fact that one can have a spiritual journey. And they have all kinds of works in philosophy in the past dealing with it. Most modern philosophers don't want to explore it. Carl Jung came along and he did an amazing thing. He said, I can study it. I can study the people who are on this quest, because really there's a model for this quest. And the model for this quest you can find in alchemy. Says alchemy is really nothing other than a symbolic representation of those people who are going on a transpersonal, a suprapersonal spiritual quest. Therefore, he has all of these great works on the relationship between psychology and alchemy. But remember now, for someone going through this, what they experience, they think, has a reality independent of themselves. Carl Jung and Freud, especially Carl Jung, says again and again and again, we can never make a judgment about the truth or the reality of anybody's experience. We can only deal with the fact that they make statements about their own experience. That's the line. As long as they keep that line, they're still in the field of psychology and psychotherapy. Now, look here. That leads us into a new problem. When you're dealing with symbols on a transpersonal level, then Carl Jung has a new set of words for them. Sometimes he calls them collective archetypes, but he also calls them mandalas. Now, you and I might say, what's the difference between a symbol and a mandala? Remember, a symbol is nothing other than a symbolic way of representing an intrapersonal conflict. That's all it is. That's what he calls it. That's how he separates it. Now, all of these people who are on these great spiritual quests don't have an intrapersonal conflict. They have a quest to reach an insight into the nature of ultimate reality. Now, Carl Jung says, this material on alchemy came into the West. It was translated for the first time in the 15th century. And the first translator was Ficino, who was the great translator of all of Plato and Plotinus and parts of Aristotle. Now, I have a curiosity. Remember the earlier statement, all psychology must stand aloof from metaphysical assertions, but now he's exploring alchemy as a model to represent the transpersonal quests of people engaged in quest for enlightenment. Now, he must avoid metaphysics. Metaphysics, of course, is philosophy. So what does he do? Well, this is what he does. These are the two great figures in alchemy: Richardus Anglicus and Bernardo of Treviso. Now I'm going to read you a couple of quotes, one from Richard and the other one from Bernard, and I'm going to do it to serve one. It's going to serve one purpose, and that's going to show you the connection between alchemy and philosophy. That's the goal. What is the connection between the two? Now, people in Europe didn't have philosophy, as I understand it, and as what was called the perennial philosophy, a spiritual basis for the philosophical quest until the 15th century, because there was no literature available before the 15th century. That's easy. You can make that claim very simply. The literature was not available. Now, people nonetheless were interested in the spiritual quest, and why did they use alchemy and all the symbols of alchemy? In order to disguise their spiritual efforts from the Inquisition. I'm not saying that, Carl Jung is saying that, and other historians have said the same thing. Therefore, when they were doing alchemy, they were really doing philosophy. Let's see if we can make that point by two quotes from Richardus Anglicus and Bernardo of Treviso. The key work that there are many, one of the very interesting ones of alchemy is from Dorn, D-O-R-N. And before I get into Richardus, I thought I'd read you a quote from him. I pray you look with the eyes of the mind at the little tree of the grain of wheat, regarding all its circumstances. Look with the eyes of the mind at the little tree of the grain of wheat, watching the grain of wheat, regarding all its circumstances, so that you may bring the tree of the philosophers to grow. The goal in philosophy is to understand the nature of reality as one. Here's a quote from Dorn. Out of other things that will never make the one until you have first become one yourself. Then he quotes from the Rosarium Philosophorum, who therefore knows the salt and its solution, knows the hidden secret of the wise men of old.